And we're at 12:34, so I'm going to welcome everybody and start us into our annual community update. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. My name is Josh. I'm the CEO here at Food First NL. And as we gather here to reflect on our food system, it's really important we recognize the position that we're reflecting on it from. Most of us are joining the call from around Newfoundland and Labrador. So we're on the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, the Mi'kmaq, the Innu, and the Inuit. There's other people on this call who are joining from Indigenous lands elsewhere, all over the country. So as we work to make our food systems more equitable, we also recognize that the damage that colonization has inflicted on people, food systems, and the environment. Food justice must be a part of our journey towards reconciliation, and we must support Indigenous food sovereignty in whatever form communities want it to take. So I'd like if everyone can kind of hold that in their minds as we work through today's meeting. We'd really appreciate keeping that lens on this work. Now, to kick us off, I'm going to welcome the chair of our board of directors, Andre Myers, to welcome us all into the call. So Andre, over to you.
Welcome, everybody. Nice to meet you all. On behalf of the board of directors, I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2025 Food First NL annual report. As a board, we've given an ambitious mandate and set of goals and are very pleased to share a significant progress with you. As a board, we're going through our continuous renewal process, and this year being no different. We have an excellent group of applicants that we're now going through. Also like to give a shout out to Caroline Harding, our past chair, and Janine Woodrow, who brought remarkable knowledge, care, and passion to Food First NL. In reflecting on 2025, the board recognizes the amount of work that Josh and the team has done at Food First NL through new partnerships and through new social enterprises across the province. So we appreciate that very much. And I'd just like to welcome everybody here, and I'll just hand it back over to you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Andre. Really appreciate it. We've got a great board at Food First. There's a good number of our board members on this call today that are just such an amazing resource for this work and for this community. So yeah, thank you, Andre. So I'm going to talk us through what we're going to cover today. The agenda is up on your screen. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the right to food in this province in 2025, what it looked like, where we think it's going next year. And then we'll spend some time telling you about our work. As many of you would know, Food First NL divides its work into 4 pathways to impact: advocating, organizing, taking action, and valuing people. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the work that happened under each of those headings. We're going to offer some transparency report on our finances and our equity work, and a few closing words and ideas as we look ahead to 2026. So I'm going to work through some slides here, probably for about 25 minutes, and then we will have a chance for a Q&A. There's lots of people on the call, which is great. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat as we go, and we'll grab them probably mostly at the end. But if there's something clarifying question about anything that we're saying right now, feel free to just drop it in there, and we'll try and grab it. So let's talk about where we got on the right to food in 2025. As you folks, many of you would know, our organization's mandate is to advance the right to food for everyone in Newfoundland and Labrador. And 2025 was actually, to be honest with you, a pretty hard year in a lot of ways. We saw food insecurity getting worse for yet another year in Newfoundland and Labrador. So for the first time, more than 30% of people in this province are experiencing food insecurity. And that's a pretty shocking number to all of us. It's a pretty sharp increase from the year before, which is 26. And it's almost triple what we saw in 2011. And that reflects a national trend. We're not the highest in the country anymore, but we're still in the top tier, unfortunately. And that is really impacting our work. And I'm sure many of the people on this call are impacted by that, either personally or in the work that you're doing. So we'll kind of hold that today. We also saw in this year some indications that the food price crisis that we're in is starting to stabilize. So we just got new data from our local nutritious food basket that shows that food prices went up just around 1% this year. That's lower than average inflation in Canada. But it also differs a little bit from the CPI calculations which found a 3.8% increase. So we've got some work to do, figure out what's happening with food prices. But when you look at the last few years together, 2021 through 24, which is the last data we have, those two measurements, they tell almost the same story, right? We've got food prices going up by 21% in 4 years. And that's just something that is affecting all of our lives in some big ways. In 2025, we also saw, as I think most of us would remember, we had elections at every level of government. We saw a change of government provincially. We did not see a change of government federally, and we saw many new faces at our municipal tables. And we saw the cost of living, food prices, and food insecurity really top of mind in many conversations with people running for election. And we are seeing now, for example, a new government that's come in with a promise to create a new poverty reduction strategy and a new agriculture strategy, a number of other things that I think we're looking for some big thinking on how to move the needle here. We also saw a year when there was a trade war that has impacted our food system in all sorts of ways. Tariffs push food prices up. They add to those inflationary pressures. It hit food producers pretty hard across the country. But we also saw governments and businesses and people pulling together really closely around some of the responses. And there's some really important conversations happening now about some of the infrastructure gaps and barriers that we still face in our food system. We also saw this year a new coalition emerge. There is now a new Newfoundland and Labrador Anti-Poverty Coalition. We are happy to be a part of it and providing some support to it. There's 40-odd organizations taking part in that coalition, and we think that does bode well for collective action in the year to come. So what might that year to come look like? There's a few things we are watching for. One is a new strategic approach from the provincial government. So we know that there was a commitment to a new poverty reduction strategy, a new agriculture strategy. Those are sorely needed. We are excited to support that with data and input wherever we can. We know that the last time there was a really large-scale poverty reduction strategy, it had a big impact in this province. And we're excited to see where this one goes. We also see a bit of an unclear picture from the federal side. So recently, a groceries and essentials benefit was introduced. That's something we've been part of advocating for with our national partners for a number of years. But it fell short. It's in scope and in design compared to what was proposed. Automatic tax filing is coming, which is really important given the way the benefits are rolling out these days and getting people the money for the food that they need. But we know that there's austerity happening at the federal level too. There's a lot of pressure on the federal government to spend on things like defense. And so we will see in 2026 how they prioritize the food insecurity crisis against all these issues. The other big defining factor we really see happening in 2026 is school food. So here in this province, we're in the process of seeing the provincial government introduce a universal school lunch program. This year, we will expect to see a lot of work happening there. The first large-scale request for proposals just closed in January to find providers for these programs. So that is going to be a defining piece of work in our food systems in this year. We're looking forward to watching them. So 2026, it's going to be a hard year ahead, but there are some real glimmers of hope. Oh, there's two more. I missed the slide. We also know that this is a year for the biennial minimum wage review. We know our minimum wage is a powerful lever to reduce food insecurity. So we will see what happens with this year's review. And we're hoping to see some motion on basic income. There have been several pilot projects in recent years. An all-party committee has completed an in-depth study of the topic. We're hoping to see that come out this year and to see some real action on basic income. So it will be a tough year, but there are these big and possibly positive pieces coming out of it. I'm going to pivot now and talk about our work at Food First NL, and I hope that context helps you understand where our work sits and how it all fits in. Under advocating, we had a number of initiatives this year. One that many folks on this call, I'm sure, participated in or answered surveys for was Next Steps for School Meals. We concluded a multi-year consultation on the future of school food in the province. We co-hosted a large event. We helped create an Indigenous school food committee. We co-hosted a webinar series because we think that there's a lot of potential for school food to be taken on by nonprofit organizations. This work is going to continue in 2026 as we work to support the implementation of school food across this province. Our From Land to Care collaborative also had a big year. So this is a multi-agency, multi-government, multi-community collaborative made up of Indigenous governments and organizations, the provincial government, ourselves, NL Health Services, and others. They launched a survey to understand what kind of country foods people want to eat. There's a discussion paper that's been built focused on the pilot project we have run to bring country foods into healthcare settings. There's a new name, the From Land to Care Collaborative, because we this year completed a 4-year run of work with a national nonprofit called Nourish and struck out on our own. And we launched a podcast, and I encourage people to Google and look up the Astronaut podcast because it's a really great listen about all these issues. We also launched this year our policy and advocacy team. That's the crew sitting there in that photo. It's been really wonderful to have the support, to have some dedicated staff capacity to work on policy. With those 3 elections that happened this year, the policy and advocacy team led advocacy and candidate engagement on all 3. We've been connecting with national partners all over Canada and meeting with decision makers at every level. And it's just been great to have some folks for whom this kind of research and analysis and sustained engagement is their jobs. And it was a huge part of our year in 2025. The next pathway in Food First NL's work is organizing. This is really, in many ways, our bread and butter at Food First NL. It's what we've been doing since we were formed, which is now more than 25 years ago, supporting organizations across this province to connect with each other and strengthen their work. We were supporting a lot of networks this year. So I mentioned the NL Anti-Poverty Coalition. Our staff helped provide the Secretariat support for that. We also support an Atlantic-wide poverty action unit that's organized by Right to Food. We help support an Atlantic-wide basic income network. With the provincial government here, we co-host a food security working group with people from every government department that really contacts food security and many of the community agencies probably who are on this call. And we are proud co-founders of the Atlantic Food Action Coalition, which is an Atlantic-wide network for organizations like ours that's networking, connecting, supporting food work across Atlantic Canada. There's some really great things happening. We also continue to work with our partners in the food charity sector, food banks, meal programs, to implement the recommendations of the Rethinking Food Charity report, which came out a couple of years ago. This year, we worked really closely with the Campus Food Bank at Memorial University. We launched a toolkit project that equipped other food bank consumers with additional educational resources that went along with the food. And we've been building a number of relationships with local, regional, national partners in the food bank, food charity space. And if anyone works on this call, works with a food bank and is looking for some support in strengthening and transforming your work, we do have some capacity to work with you one-on-one. So please reach out. We also were a funder this year. And when we get to the transparency report part of this call, you'll see this show up in our budget. This year, we partnered with peer organizations across all 4 Atlantic provinces to disperse $1 million of federal government funds through the School Food Infrastructure Fund program. We funded 18 organizations, including 3 here in Newfoundland and Labrador, all sorts of projects to support the development of school food infrastructure. And this one is a new one. We are launching this one officially today, but 2025 was a year of work with our partners at Common Approach. And they helped us build a live dashboard of a lot of the numbers and indicators that we care about. And this has gone live on our website now. And what it is it's a place where anyone on this call or anyone at all can come and track down those numbers that you might be interested in around food security. Things like what our rate of food insecurity is, how much a nutritious food basket costs, all those core pieces of information that people are using in their advocacy on the day-to-day. So feel free to come anytime to this dashboard. It'll automatically update as new data rolls out. And we're really excited to have that be a part of our offering out to community from now on. The third pathway to impact for Food First NL is taking action. And this is where you see Food First NL operating projects on the ground. And a lot of the time, this comes from conversations with community. We do a lot of dialogue with community where people express needs, say, this is what my community needs to see. And sometimes it's something that we are well placed to do ourselves. And when that happens, this is where taking action shows up for Food First NL. And this year in particular, we saw a lot of growth in our social enterprise offerings. I'll take you through what those look like. The first one in the Metro St. John's area is Food on the Move. Many folks on this call would know Food on the Move, but if you don't, it is a mobile, affordable food market that provides fresh foods at an extremely affordable price in locations all over the city where people might struggle to access fresh food otherwise. This year, it was a really busy year of fine-tuning. We moved to a really regular bi-weekly schedule throughout the year. We added a pickup point at the College of the North Atlantic here in St. John's, where I am, knowing and hearing once more that student food insecurity is a real challenge. And so in 2026, we look forward to keeping this program going and continuing to get food on the move all over Metro St. John's. It's a really solid, stable program with some great partners. If you've been to a Food on the Move market, there's almost always the library along for the ride, and NL Health Services and other partners coming along. It's a really good time. In Western Newfoundland, we operate a social enterprise called the Western NL Food Hub. I suspect there's some Food Hub customers on this call today. The Food Hub functions as effectively an online marketplace for local food from dozens of producers. This year was a big year for the Western Food Hub. We have a new physical home at 62 Broadway in Corner Brook, in the Arts Hub, the bottom level of the Arts Hub that's there with some great neighbors. We're just finishing up the renos there now, but we've been operating from that space for some time. We've added new pickup locations in partnership with People of the Dawn Indigenous Friendship Center. We're serving the Stephenville area. We added home delivery of local food. And we've been really focusing on getting local food on the menu at larger events, workshops, things like that, getting local food out into the community all over Western Newfoundland and Labrador. So it's going to be a big year in 2026 for this program for sure. We're really excited to see where it goes. And it'll also be a big year for the Avalon Food Hub, which launched in October of 2025 as our second food hub. Similar model, almost the exact same model as the Western Newfoundland operation. So the big exciting thing for us was getting this off the ground and watching it grow so quickly. We built a staff team to run it. We've been onboarding vendors, growers, partners every day. And every day I get to hear about a new thing, and I get to shop at this one all the time, and I get to see the bounty of local food that's in that system. And we've been able to create a really welcoming home at the new Our Table space here in St. John's, where I am, and I'll tell you about that in a second. There's probably some folks on the call who were at this event the other day. We, alongside our partners at Stella Circle, are now jointly operating a large programming space called Our Table here in St. John's in the Pleasantville area on Charter Avenue. It was a big year for this project. Over 2025, we finished up a really large-scale community engagement process to get to know the neighbors, understand what they wanted to see out of the space. And worked with designers to figure out how that would look and how it could play out, physically transform the space in so many different ways. And it's given our social enterprises, Food on the Move and the Avalon Food Hub, a new home. And it's given us just a wonderful partner with Stella Circle, who operate the Hungry Heart Cafe here on site at Our Table, with whom we're building up a really great programming partnership. And it was a real joy of 2025 to get this project across the finish line. and open to the public. We also did a lot of smaller and critical things around local food action. So there are probably people on this call who have emailed our team asking for help with a project or a local food initiative. And that is a really common thing. So last year we received 239 requests like that. We went out and participated in 45 odd presentations, conferences, gatherings. And we now have a team of regional food animators. So there are folks that work in every region of this province supporting community-led action on food. So those are the folks who you can reach out to no matter what region you're in. And if you have an idea that you want to advance, the animators are there to help you. So this year was a really busy year for those animators. And for reconnecting with some of the other regional resources like the regional wellness coalitions, who are just wonderful supporters of grassroots work. So we really reconnected with them in a deep way. And we baked a connection in Labrador. We've been on the road doing workshops that also involve some pretty delicious food led by our Labrador food animator. So that's going to continue well through 2026. And we again encourage you, if you have a food initiative that you want to work on, reach out to the animator team. They are there to support you, to help you find resources, to help you connect with others who might be doing similar work, and they're a real backbone of this part of Food First NL's mandate. The final pathway to impact for Food First NL is valuing people. And for us, this means two things. It means valuing our own people, because we are an incredibly people-driven organization. And it also means valuing the voices of lived experience, of people who have lived experience with food insecurity in this province. It's really nice. I can see a few members of our Lived and Living Experience Advisory Group on this call today. And I think I'm really glad to see your faces and your names. The Lived and Living Advisory Group, for folks who don't know, is a group, it's what it sounds like. It is a group of folks from across this province with a lived and living experience of food insecurity. They are paid for their time. They are self-directed and autonomous with support from our team, and they advocate widely. Sometimes they advocate to us. Sometimes they advocate to others. They consult, they converse in public, and they're really building some amazing ideas and solidarity around what food insecurity looks like and what a better future could be. And this year was just such a pleasure, that the Lived Experience Advisory Group really built their ownership of this work in some powerful ways, and their confidence. They were going to conferences. They were, interrogating politicians. They were speaking out at local, provincial, national levels. And they organized their own action during the federal and provincial election campaigns, their own questionnaires for candidates, their own media appearances. They really emerged as a force in 2025. And we can't wait to see what 2026 looks like for the Lived Experience Advisory Group. The other side of the valuing people coin, as I mentioned, for us is our team. And this was, I think, a big, important year for our team at Food First NL. It's a big team these days, at least by our standards. There's 22 of us. And there's a lot of work we did this year on building up a team that works together with care and with intention. One thing is that we were in person with each other a lot more this year. Our operating model here at Food First NL is hybrid. We all work at home sometimes, away sometimes, but we saw a lot more of each other this year. And that's probably going to continue, especially where I am here in St. John's with this new space at our table. We, like lots of other nonprofits in this province, navigated some pretty significant uncertainty this year. Funding and stability is always something that's a challenge to chase. But it actually turned out pretty well. And I'm happy to say that, we are in a really wonderful position right now. We have a number of multi-year partnerships that came on board this year, and we are feeling the most stable that we have in many years here at Food First NL. So thanks to the work of those folks. We've also just been building up our capacity in all sorts of ways, from our equity learning series to our own capacity for training and support for our folks. And it's been really important to us to sustain ourselves as a living wage employer. So our wages here at Food First NL are pegged to the living wage in this province, and they will continue to be. And that's been something that's a commitment of ours that we were really happy to be able to keep sustaining. And that's probably a good segue to the last chunk of our report to you, and then we can move into some questions. But we want to share some of the numbers behind our work and some of the things that we took on when we ask ourselves some critical questions around equity. So we have a strong internal commitment here at Food First NL around equity and learning and change on our team. This year, what that looked like is monthly all staff learning sessions on all sorts of topics. Everything from the role that artificial intelligence could play in our work to more applied training on intervention in crisis. And what we've been doing now is finding ways to bring those topics and those discussions into our policy recommendations that we make outside, but also into our day-to-day practices. So once we have one of these conversations about a tough or complicated issue, how do we turn those into policies at the organizational level? And how do we share some of that with our friends in the community sector? And there was a lot of work that happened this year on this file. I'll also tell you a little bit about the money. And I mentioned earlier that this year is an interesting one because we've been administering this large federal grant, the School Food Infrastructure Fund. And you'll see that means that Food First NL's budget was quite a lot larger if you've been coming to these calls or these meetings for a few years. We were well past $2 million in budget this year, and a full $1 million of that was that fund. And so this pie chart shows where the money comes from at Food First NL. And this year, because of that fund, the biggest chunk was federal. 43% of our dollars came in from the federal government. The next biggest chunk is from foundations. We work with numerous foundations across the country. Almost 40% of our revenue, 38, comes from them. About just under 9% from the province, just under 2% from municipal governments. And then the piece of the pie that's growing now is social enterprise sales. So 6% of our revenue at Food First comes from the businesses that we operate. And that's been a really interesting journey for us to figure out. On the flip side of that, where did that money go? Almost half of it, as you can see, went to those grants. So went back out the door to community organizations all around the Atlantic region. The rest of it, as I mentioned, we are a people-driven team. Most of the money we spend here at Food First NL is getting people out into the field to support the work that all of you on this call and others are doing. That was the biggest chunk of our expenditure by far. Then at about another 3% for overhead, around 3% for overhead and program expenses each. And then cost of goods, because we have to buy the stuff that we sell. So I think it's a fairly simple picture, to be honest with you, of how this organization works. And there's many people here are familiar with our team and what they do, and that's how this shows up. So I'll close the presentation part, and then we'll have some time for a conversation with each other. What does 2026 look like for Food First NL? We already talked a little bit at the top of this meeting about what 2026 will look like for the right to food. But where are we sitting as an organization? There's a few big highlights, I think, that you'll see. One is that we will be continuing to expand our social enterprise footprint around the province. So the Avalon Food Hub in the Avalon region is going to be growing in lots of different ways. We'll be continuing to expand the Western Newfoundland Food Hub. We will be looking for new partnerships, new ways to move food around this province. We will be working even harder on policy. So our policy and advocacy team is up at full strength now. It does mean that we have more capacity to do work on policy to support the Anti-Poverty Coalition, but also just to produce our own policy output research. We're adding a number of things around transportation policy this year. It's something that the community continuously tells us is important. We'll also be launching into a bit more work on food and climate. I would say this is one of the parts of the policy landscape that Food First NL has done least with, is that intersection between the climate crisis and food security, and that's going to really shift in 2026 for us. We're going to be working to activate our physical spaces. So, as I mentioned, the renovations are nearly complete at 62 Broadway in Corner Brook. And then the renovations are complete at 77 Charter Avenue, our table here in St. John's. And so this is going to be a big year of settling into those spaces and really filling them with programming and with life. And we'll really be leaning into our coalitions and partnerships this year. So almost nothing that Food First NL accomplishes gets accomplished alone. And as you saw from this presentation, we are sitting in this web of so many different partnerships and coalitions. And that's going to be a really critical part of our work this year to try and move this needle on what is going to be a hard year on our food systems. And so there's lots of folks on this call who will be working with on that, and we really appreciate that you've spent this time with us today, understanding about what our work looks like, because we can only do this together. And we want to thank you. There's lots of members of our team on this call, and we just want to take a second to thank you all. Whether you're a partner organization, you might be a funder, a supporter out in community, a government partner. We're doing this stuff together, and this was a big year for doing that work together, and we really thank you for it.